we going?
Swimming!
Some bad hat, Harry.
It's a great white.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
1,100 men went into the water.
You son of a...
Hey everybody, it's Ross over at the Daily Jaws. I hope you're well. You're probably wondering why I'm wearing a Santa hat and why Bruce is looking so festive. Well, two reasons. One, it's December, Christmas is just around the corner. And the other reason is because of the guest I'm about to interview. This is a filmmaker and film director who has made all types of shark films, including Ghost Shark, Mississippi River Shark, and Ozark Shark. But her most famous film is Santa Jaws. I'm going to be interviewing the director, Misty Talley. But first of all, let's take a quick look at some Santa Jaws.
Can't believe you would do this on Christmas Eve. You're grounded.
What? Tomorrow is the Christmas Eve comic book party.
Well, you should have thought of that before.
You're better off without him. Isn't that right, Santa Jaws?
That is not a shark! That is Santa Jaws! I know her! I made her! That is her!
Ho, 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 you son of a fish.
So, Misty, thank you so much for taking some time out to talk to us today. Welcome to the Daily Jaws. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem, no problem. You've also got a special guest on your lap with us today. Who is that?
Yes, this is one of my cats, Senor Dante.
Hello, Senor. So obviously, as we know, you've directed or been involved with quite a few shark movies sort of throughout your career. How does one forge a career in shark movies?
It's kind of a right time and place situation as far as, because these were all films that were pre-ordered by the Sci-Fi Channel. And so there was I guess I'll call it the early 2000s shark boom. And I happened to be getting into editing at the time and was an assistant editor and editor on, like Ghost Shark and Swamp Shark and movies like that. And then after Sharknado, things really blew up and there was like a shark exploitation boom. And at that point I had directed some short films and started directing, and now the shark market's kind of dried up, unfortunately. And I've been doing a lot of Christmas movies because Christmas movies are like the new sharks, I guess, sadly.
I was going to say, because you're right, everything sort of seemed to kick off for the shark movie when Sharknado came out. When I first saw Sharknado, when I first saw the poster, I thought, okay, this is interesting. And then I saw the film, and a lot of people have got like thinking, oh, this is just a novelty film and it will go away. But I think it spawned sort of 4 sequels, and obviously movies like Ghost Shark and 8-headed monster shark versus octopus and all this kind of stuff. And obviously you've landed with Santa Jaws. Now, tell us a bit about Santa Jaws for those of us that maybe haven't seen it before.
Santa Jaws is the story of Cody, a young boy who draws comic books in his spare time, and he's extremely angsty, and for Christmas he's gifted a magical pen by his grandfather, and in kind of a huff he makes a wish as he draws his comic book Santa Jaws that Santa Jaws would kill his family, and lo and behold, Santa Jaws comes to life and starts picking off family members one by one.
See,
and he has to try to stop it.
It's a really interesting idea, because when I first started doing the research for Santa Jaws, and I've watched it a couple of times, I've really enjoyed it. It wasn't what I expected it to be. As you sort of say, it takes on this almost like a mystical approach, sort of a supernatural thing. Where did that idea come from? Because when you think Santa Jaws, you probably think I don't know, the shark comes through the chimney and attacks people as it's delivering presents or something. But you've taken a very specific sort of idea and angle with it. Where did that come from?
Well, this movie, I guess, is a lot of a patchwork of movie inspirations. Sci-Fi Channel specifically wanted, at the time that it was being written, Stranger Things season 1 had just kind of kicked off, and they were like, that's what we want. We want kids, you know. And so I was like, well, cool. You know, I'm a big like Goonies fan, and I love movies like that. So kind of developed it in that direction. And then I started kind of putting in other movies, like the Gremlin sort of element of like a magical pen that comes from a, you know, like going to the store and like buying this like magical item. And then also like a little Home Alone influence in there, I think, with the angstiness of Cody. So it kind of became a little like hodgepodge of these Christmas movies that I really loved.
So did you have sort of complete creative control and you sort of, as you say, meshed together the elements of the movies that you always loved, or did you have quite a clear brief as to what Santa Jaws sort of was going to be?
These movies are really interesting and unique in the sense that it doesn't start with a script at all. It starts with a title and kind of builds from there with like approvals along the way. Okay. I feel like, and there's a different executive assigned to each one, and on this one I was very lucky to have one that I really liked working with a lot at Sci-Fi and gave me a lot more freedom than I'd had in the past, and so that was very, very cool. And really the only guide that I had was the Stranger Things. So like, we want something Stranger Things-esque with a group of 4 kids. And as from that I developed like short synopsis, and they were like, oh, we like this one. You kind of give them some options. And then from there, a treatment, they approve it. And then from there, you kind of go to the script. So it's kind of like a reverse filmmaking process where like along the way, producers are like checking each bit as you move forward.
That's fascinating. That's really, because when Steven Spielberg first saw the script for Jaws, he thought it was about a dentist. He didn't think it was about a shark at all. So I guess the idea of sort of starting off with the title and then working backwards can basically take you into all kinds of really interesting places. And I think just what you said about sort of gearing it around kids, that was so refreshing to see, because obviously Christmas is about kids generally and presents. And you really get a feel. I mean, the lead actor, Reed Miller, I think his name was, wasn't it? He was brilliant in Santa Jaws. I've got to say, like, he really is the heart and soul of this film. And he's this, he's this determined, I don't even know what the word is, it's sort of a determined, frustrated kid that brings this monster to life and then all of a sudden becomes the hero of his own story, which without giving too much away, I think it's really, really interesting. I mean, how did you go around sort of casting that role in the children and also directing the younger actors, bearing in mind they're in this crazy Santa shark film?
I think the casting is the most interesting part of making Santa Jaws. So I think with any movie, you'll have like a department that's like the biggest challenge. And with this one, because the thing is, the budget on these movies is so low that it's a very set time schedule. So we could only afford to shoot for 12 days. Oh, wow. But the issue there becomes you can't have children because they can only work 5 hours at a time. And if they're in every scene, then it doesn't make, the math doesn't work. So originally, Sci-Fi wanted like middle schoolers, and to cast children to play middle schoolers, I was like, this just isn't in the cards. And so we kind of negotiated their ages up and up to reach like 14, 15, and then cast adults to play the children. And it was a very exhaustive search to find 4 adults that, or emancipated minors as well. Courtney, the leading lady, she was an emancipated minor, which they do a lot out here. If your kid's an actor, and they can then work as they're 18, like as though they're 18 if they get emancipated. So finding the 4 kids was super hard. It was the most casting tapes I've ever had to look at. and and even like with all the work we put in, I feel like we still got lucky.
I was gonna say, the dynamic between the kids, particularly the two best friends, I think is brilliant. And as you say, I think the casting was a big part of that. In terms of making, because I mean, I didn't realize you only had 12 days to make it. I mean, that's amazing in itself. And I don't know how familiar you are with the making of Jaws, but it's, you know, Jaws was a really difficult film to make. They had like 159 days, and everything that went wrong or could go wrong did go wrong.
My favorite filmmaking book is the Jaws log, and I think it's just a perfect. Yep.
It's actually on my bookshelf. It's an incredible book, isn't it? So it's when I speak to filmmakers, they always reference the Jaws log as one of the first and best sort of movie making books that they've read, because it's just a really honest account of how to make a film, but also how not to make a film at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. But yes, yeah. So I mean, just filming on the water alone for that short amount of time, like over the course, because I've directed 4 shark movies, and each one I'm like, the first one I was like, great, easy, we'll just go out on boats. Absolutely not. No way.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have time, energy, money to shoot on the water, and it was a mess. And so like on this one, there's boats, but they're always docked. They're always, you know, it's always like docked boats, and, you know, walking out of the water on docks, never boats.
Yeah. I was going to say, because I noticed that in the movie. Yeah, no, it was like absolute genius. I mean, because bearing in mind, as you say, low budget, low amount of time, logistically, to get out on a boat to try filming that sort of stuff would have been really challenging. So, yeah, very smart filmmaking.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, the time is so tight that, I mean, genuinely, we had about like 2 weeks to write it, 2 weeks to shoot it, and 2 weeks to edit it. So it happens that fast. The whole thing was done in the course of like 2.5 months.
Wow. And were you involved in every sort of step? So the writing, casting, editing, and obviously the directing and everything else?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I also co-produced it. So yeah, I was there from the very beginning of the development, and all the way through to editing and post supervising. So yeah.
And what's the reaction been to Santa Jaws? Obviously, it's been out since 2018, but
yeah.
Every Christmas, more and more people seem to be finding the movie. What's the reaction been like?
I love that about Santa Jaws, is that each year it's had like a resurgence and a sort of growth, and more people sort of reach out to me about it, and I'm just really glad people like it, because whenever I finished it, I was like, I feel like this is a solid movie that I enjoy watching, which is, you know, it's a good feeling, because you don't always feel like that about movies, especially when you make them in that sort of time frame and with that sort of restriction. But yeah.
I mean, no, I think, you know, and again, I'm not a filmmaker, so I'm purely speaking from an audience fan point of view. But yeah, if I'd have been involved in something like Santa Jaws, bearing in mind you've only been in it, so I had sort of 6 weeks to really put it together, and you're involved in every step of the way. That's a massive achievement. And I think when people watch it for the first time, so I've watched it 3 times now. I watched it a while ago and then twice again for the interview. There was just more and more stuff that I spot. And the way that I look at Jaws, it's actually sort of the way I look at a lot of films now, is I look at different elements of them. So the acting, the sound, the editing, all that kind of stuff. Because obviously, if you've read the Jaws log and you're familiar with the backstory of Jaws, all that kind of stuff, when you look back at what they achieved, bearing in mind all the challenges they had, that's a textbook film in terms of just not just how to make a scary movie, but a really good, solid film, how to build story, how to get your casting correct. One question I did want to ask you, because obviously you're an editor, as you say, before you sort of became sort of a director. Jaws won the Oscar for editing, and obviously Verna Fields is she's a genius. And back in the day, she was obviously using a physical editing, cutting machine. It wasn't digital or anything like that. Yeah. When you look at Jaws as a film from a craft point of view, what do you take away from that now that you're a filmmaker?
Oh, that's such a great question. Yeah, and it's such a powerful film. I think it's such a tricky thing because of the evolution, like looking at the evolution of shark movies, starting with Jaws. The way in which the like a monster movie genre like sharks can evolve, is like you always have to kind of like subvert the thing that people are expecting, and these like things that become tropes, like in Jaws, sort of like not showing the shark, you know, and then over time you show the shark more, and that becomes like the gimmick of you know, Jaws 3D, or you know, whatever it may be, and then it kind of becomes this like exploitation genre. That's like I'm very interested in like exploitation film, and that's something that's like very fun for me. But I love Jaws as like the like seed that this like whole genre grew from. Yeah, but I mean, Steven Spielberg just does some of the most clever things, and you can see how resourceful he had to be in it, which is something that I really love. Like simple shots too. Like there's a great moment when Quinn is meeting, blanking on his name, the scientist. Hooper, yeah. And Quinn is meeting Hooper, and they're in that sort of like shed, and you know, you don't want to, like the filmmaking term, cross the line. So you shoot, you know, you stand on the same side to shoot. It's hard to explain without like drawing a little map, but there you could tell because of the space they're in, they had to cross the line, and they solved the problem by having Quinn pull Hooper across, like grab him and pull him across camera, and so now they're able to flip the line. And it's like problem solving like that. Like once you kind of understand like why things like that are necessary, but it's very elegant in the solutions that they came up with for like simple problems, or you know, the long shot on the ferry, that's like a classic sort of take.
One of my favorite edits in, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. I was just going to say, one of my favorite edits in Jaws is the beach scene, where it keeps cutting between Brody and what he's seeing, and you've got people walking across the screen, and it's almost like one continuous shot, and you don't even notice it's happening. And it's just from a craft point of view, I just think the editing on its own is just textbook. Then you add in, as you say, Spielberg's amazing direction, blocking, problem solving. Forget the shark itself, because that was just a whole other problem. But just basic filmmaking. And this guy was 26, 27 when he made it. It's incredible to think that, isn't it?
I mean, watching a movie like Jaws, if you're a filmmaker, is really like, I don't know, eating your Wheaties. It's just like it's just what to do, like how to solve major problems in the simplest ways that just work. You know, sometimes I get really, because I still do a lot of editing, and I'll get really caught up in like, well, I can't do a crossfade or you know, and it's like I always have a moment where I'm like, some things just work, and just like get off your editorial high horse and do what you know works, because that's what people, it's like its own language, and so people understand that language when they see it. And it's movies like Jaws are a perfect example of like just textbook, perfectly executed. Okay,
so this leads me perfectly to the question that I've been wanting to ask you. I've been waiting a week and a half to ask you this question. Universal Studios give you a call. They go, Misty, we're going to do something new with Jaws. You've got complete creative control. What's your pitch for a new Jaws movie?
Oh man, okay.
I know, completely off guard there. So I know I'm asking you just to think on your feet, but I'm really pleased to ask this question.
Yeah, because I would do a big old brainstorming session and really think of something good. Okay, let me think. Do
you want me to leave that cook in your mind for a little bit? Move on to the next question, or are you happy to think about it?
Yeah, let's revisit it, because I feel like there's a lot of possibilities there, and that's never crossed my mind. I have some like cool shark movie ideas brewing, you know, but not Jaws, in the Jaws universe, which is an interesting question.
Well, let's let that bubble away. We'll come back to it. So I guess my next question then is, if you were to write, say, I don't know, a top tips guide to making a good shark movie, what do you think is a good shark movie? What are the ingredients you need?
In terms of what you want to see, or like directing tips for making shark movies?
I'll let you interpret the question however you want.
Okay. Okay, I'll say one of the main ingredients is make sure there's motivation to keep people on the water. You know, because the fundamental problem that can happen with a lot of shark movies is why don't they just not go by the water?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's like you gotta address that, and everything has to circle around why people have to be on the water and why they're in danger's way, because they have to be in danger. Another big element is don't skimp on character development, even, you know, in a horror or action movie, because the more invested you are, the better. I think some of my favorite compliments I've gotten on my movies specifically is people saying like, hey, this is like a movie I didn't expect to care about the characters, but I really do. Yeah. And I think that, you know, that goes for any movie. I think, you know, you won't care about it if you don't care about the characters, but, and then let me think, what else is a must? Oh, okay. I think this kind of the moment, like if you're making a shark movie this year, figure out a way to integrate practical effects as much as possible, because it pays off in spades.
I was going to say around the whole, where do you sit on the whole practical CGI effects? Obviously in Santa Jaws, again, without giving too much away, there's a lovely little balance between practical effects and the CGI, but obviously Spielberg at the time didn't have CGI or anything in Jaws. If you were to say unlimited budget, unlimited time, all that kind of stuff, all the resources you ever wanted, do you think you would go back to traditional practical effects? And if you would, why would you do that?
Okay, so I think CGI and VFX is great as a tool to enhance practical effects, ideally. So that's how I like to use it. So I love to use practical as much as possible and then use my CG as cleanup. So I think that's like the ideal. And then also, you know, if you have practical builds of everything, then it really opens up the quality of your CG a lot. So like, I mean, Jurassic Park's a great example where all the dinosaurs were actually built. And whenever you see CG versions, they're like scans, basically modeled after a real thing, which makes a world of difference, and it'll stand up. It'll look right. But yeah, that's something that I've really learned the value of is practical effects. The fin alone, I mean, especially whenever you're balancing resources. So like I have a limited budget for visual effects. And whenever I sit down with like my VFX supervisor, I'm like, this is how much we have. And like, what's the best use of that? And we'll storyboard. Like we don't have time to storyboard the entire movie, obviously, in our pinched amount of time. But I always storyboard with the visual effects supervisor the action scenes, and they'll say like, okay, if we do it this way, this is like definitely the most bang for your buck. This grouping of shots, and it's like, okay, how is everything else practical? And then my tiny bit of VFX cleanup budget goes towards like enhancing those shots. So striking that balance is always the better I get at that, the better my effects look for sure. Cause that's a real tricky one. And then the VFX supervisor is always on set. They're just like, cause in the moment it's easier to go like, okay, we'll just make this VFX. I know we weren't planning on it. And then he's there. He's like, no.
Yeah.
No, you can figure it out.
It's classic Spielberg, because that's basically what happened with Jaws. He just had to keep shooting stuff, and the budget went up and up and up because they sort of passed the point of no return, and they just had to continue making the movie. So, yeah, maybe a Spielberg set isn't too bad a place to be. But yeah, I think there's a real because I absolutely agree. I think that effects based in some kind of practical reality, and then, as you say, enhanced with CGI. So whether it's cleanup or a standalone CGI effect to as long as it helps tell the story, I think that's the main thing, you know. And obviously, the tighter the budget and the tighter the time, you've got less to sort of make those decisions. But I think, as you say, Jurassic Park's a great example, and I have seen some movies, because I'm old school. I'm like, you know, I love The Thing and all that kind of stuff, where it's Rob Bottin and those really great classic practical effects. But then you look at, say, the remake of The Thing, which was 2011, I think it was, and a lot of it was CGI. But originally, when that was made, that was all practical effects, or a massive proportion of it was going to be practical. But people got involved from the studio, looked at it, and they went, "We need more CGI," because that's what the audience are expecting. They see that as a natural progression in terms of physical effect storytelling. And I'm like, well, actually, we want to see the innovation of the new practical effects. That's what I want to see. You know, that's why when I saw Deep Blue Sea, have you seen Deep Blue Sea, the shark movie? Yeah. That was 1999. So you're talking about 25 years after Jaws. And the thing that blew me away was the practical effects. You know, the actual physical interaction of the actors with, you know, a real mechanical or animatronic shark that can swim on its own freely under remote control. And I'm thinking, I want to see a Jaws movie made like that. You know, I want to see a 25-foot great white shark, remote control. One, because I could play semi-practical jokes on some beachgoers. But second, just imagine that in a film and what you could do with that. And I think there's a lot of people that sort of still really want that physical experience rather than just you know, the whole CGI. But then you look again at someone like Spielberg, who made Ready Player One, and I think a huge bulk of this, particularly the virtual effects, are all CGI, but probably based in some practical reality, particularly the race scene, when they're all sort of darting through that race course and all that kind of stuff. When it's done right, it's amazing. It's an amazing experience. But I think, as you say, it needs to be grounded in some kind of practical effect, some kind of practical reality. Does that make sense? Have I just talked about rubbish?
No. I mean, that's just it. So we went even to the extent, and this is the first time in any of my movies that we've had somebody in the water playing the shark. But the visual effects, or the stunt supervisor, actually had a full green suit and would jump out of the water and grab the actors and pull them in. And the effect is so much better than just telling an actor to fall, because their clothes move, the water moves practically. And when you put a CG shark into that environment, it just blends so much better, because water, like particles, are such a tricky thing. Like getting a splash never looks right if it's CG, but getting it, like, I mean, it just all of a sudden the effect works that much better. Makes a huge difference. Yeah.
I guess it's, again, I'm purely speaking from a layman's point of view, but I guess it might be a bit easier as well to map the action of the CGI over it, because you've got a physical reference point, I guess.
The timing of it is like done for you, so you don't have to figure out how long it would take a shark or an object to move out of the water, grab something, and fall back in. That question's already answered for them, and it's already timed out. And so it becomes a much, I don't want to say their job's easy, but it takes a lot of guesswork out for them, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess when time is of the essence, that's really important, just to remove that element and just so they can basically crack on with the work.
Yeah, the modeling artist for Santa Jaws, Nico, I think she actually put up a VFX reel, and it has the before and afters of what the plate looked like with the actor, the coordinator, like coming out of the water and pulling people in. And then like each version, like, you know, the gray model, it's just like roughed in, and then the final version and the cleanup. So I think that's pretty easy to find if you search for like Santa Jaws VFX reel, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have a link to it in the interview. I think I'd love to see that. A green man grabbing someone from the water. I just
remembered, I don't think it's on the reel, it might be, but the first time we put the stunt coordinator into the water in the full like head to toe green suit, we just didn't think about this, but you know, we accidentally waterboarded him because we didn't cut a hole for his mouth, and he went under and just came back up freaking out because he was actually being waterboarded. And we were like, what's wrong? You were under for 1 second.
No.
But he thought it was hilarious, so he's fine.
Well, he wouldn't be the first, would he? Because Susan Backlinie, the lady, the stunt woman and actress that played Chrissy, the first victim in Jaws, the whole story around her being pulled around by cables and having her ribs damaged and stuff, apparently that's not true. But what happened was, when they actually went back to re-record the sound looping, Richard Dreyfuss walked into the studio to do some looping for some of his stuff, and he saw apparently Steven Spielberg waterboarding Susan Backlinie while she was screaming, "Please God, no!" all this kind of stuff. So your stuntman isn't the first person in shark movie history to get waterboarded. Talking of filmmaking now, obviously this year 2020 was the 45th anniversary of Jaws, which was a really big deal for us and also the army of fans. And we made our own version of Jaws. We basically put the call out to all of our followers and just said, look, we're going to try and remake Jaws, and we want to premiere it on the night that Jaws came out 45 years ago. And the response was amazing, and we put together this sort of 1 hour, 15-minute version of Jaws. We called it Jaws Remake. Did you get a chance to watch it? And if you did,
I did. I did.
What did you think?
I absolutely loved it. It was a total blast to watch, and I was cracking up. It's just like, man, it's so cool how like ideas can be communicated with the simplest things, you know, and it all, like the things that worked were amazing. I mean, it worked, but whenever something, you know, just like, I think the first thing that comes to mind is the chick in the shark outfit, like skateboard pushing her way with the gas tank in her mouth going like, I mean, it just worked so perfectly. And it was like intercut with like, you know, plastic shark version of it too. And oh man, it works. It shows you how like little you really need to like communicate what's happening.
You're absolutely right. And one of the thing what I loved about it, because one of the things that we were a little bit afraid of was that people were just going to do a straightforward remake of the scenes, but they interpreted them in so many different ways. Like one of my favorite scenes in the movie is the autopsy scene, where there's one guy talking to himself, and he obviously the head, the shoulders, and he pulls out a bottle of Head and Shoulders out of a bowl, and you're just like, this is absolute genius. So I'm really glad that you liked Jaws Remake. We're getting requests to do Jaws 2 now. I don't know how we're going to do that, but you know, if you want a job, we might need a director and editor for that. We think when our because our chief writer Dean, he was editing Jaws Remake, and he had Jaws on one screen and Remake on another, and was trying to edit and match them together. We think he now possibly holds the world record for watching Jaws the most amount of times during that period, because I think he watched it probably about 800 times. He was absolutely sick of it by the end of it, but when we premiered it, the response was just crazy.
I mean, I would be interested to watch it side by side, because it was so, like, it was things that you didn't, like, I've seen Jaws a lot, and, you know, it's like things that I didn't know were important to the story in a way, like, came out more, like the way that edits were happening, and this is hard to explain, but it was like, scenes that aren't the first scenes that you think about. But whenever kind of like watching people reinterpret those, you kind of get that, I don't know, it just kind of, again, is one of those things that shows you how good Jaws is. And it's like every scene is really important and memorable, you know?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think when we speak to people, particularly people sort of my age, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
36. My birthday was last weekend.
Oh, well, happy birthday for last weekend.
Thank you.
So you and I, we're not a too dissimilar age group. And I think we were probably watching Jaws probably a few years after it first came out, when we were sort of quite young. And when I first watched it as a kid, all I wanted to do was watch it for the shark and the blood and the guts and the gore. Yeah. But now as I watch it sort of as an adult, now I watch it for the characters and those human moments, even more than the shark stuff. The shark stuff's amazing. Obviously, it's super suspenseful, all that kind of stuff. But when we got the Jaws Remake footage coming through, there was two parts that we kept getting over and over and over again. One was the Indianapolis speech. Everybody wanted to do that because it's such a great speech. But the other one was the Brody and Sean at the dinner table, when they're copying each other, putting funny faces and stuff. And we got a lot of parents sending us clips with their kids doing that. And it's just like, we didn't even have to make it Jaws to do that. It's just what they do. it's just such a real human moment. And I think that's, for me, part of the secret to the longevity of Jaws. You can watch it in lots and lots of different ways and appreciate it for this amazing piece of film craft work that it is, and also just stunning semi-debut of one of the best filmmakers and storytellers that's ever been. So you've had a few minutes to cook on that idea now about what your Jaws movie might look like. So Universal on the phone, what do you reckon?
All right, so I think it could be interesting. So this is, again, I haven't workshopped this. But if I'm trying to remember the other Jaws movies too, because I'm like, did this happen? But I don't think so. If one of Brody's sons was now the town sheriff, and it's a sort of rehash of Jaws, but with a little twist on everything and a modernization and integrating, because I think it'd be interesting to see Jaws kind of as is, but I don't want to say with technology integrated, but a lot's changed in terms of that. So
RoboShark.
Right. Yeah, what well, because if we had to take out a shark now, what would the what would we use? Or okay, fresh idea here. Now that we're talking about technology, sharks go straight for, whenever you lay fiber optic cables underneath water, they go straight for them, and it's a huge problem for people trying to run really long internet connections through shark waters.
Okay.
And because
it's up, by the way, or is this true?
This is true.
Oh, right. Okay. So I thought it was just part of your story. Okay. Right. Okay. Cool. Right.
Yeah. And so I actually did a pitch that's kind of similar to this, called the Shark Web, and we're like,
I like the title.
where because this really is true. Sharks go straight for fiber optic cables. So it could be a sort of thing where they're modernizing the town and they're laying fiber optic cables, and it attracts a new giant shark, a new Bruce. And that's the sort of thing. It's they're we got to lay this cable, kind of putting the highway through the Indian burial ground, if you will. They were no, we're a big corporation and the cable's got to go in no matter what.
And there's your motivation for keeping people in the water.
Exactly. Yeah. There's crews in the water. And maybe the sort of twist on the story is now the sheriff's kind of trying to protect the shark in a way, and the corporation then becomes the bad guy.
I think we've got
I've done it again.
I think we've got a movie. Right, where do we sign up?
That's solid, man. That's solid stuff.
Mate.
One of the cool things about the Sci-Fi Channel shark movies is they had it'd be a pitch session twice a year. And they'd be come with, as many titles as possible, and they'd read through the titles and pick the 2-3 they liked, and those are the ones we'd make for the year. But there's so many good ones that never got through, in my opinion, and there's still, some of them are still, stuck in my craw as movies I'd love to make. But definitely the Shark Web would be one. Also, I thought this was great, Sharktoberfest, where a shark attacks an Oktoberfest festival. And then also Water Park Shark. I don't know why that hasn't happened, but I have ideas.
Is it a rule that they have to rhyme, all of them? Dark Shark, Water Park Shark, Car Park Shark. What else do you have?
It gives you an edge when you're pitching them, because it's
it just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, I can feel a movie coming along here. I think we need to have another call after this and just sort of pitch some movies. When is the pitching thing for Sci-Fi Channel? Well,
now unfortunately, so Sharknado Week was happening for 5 or 6 years, and it was the week after Shark Week, and they'd premiere a new Sharknado movie, and along with that, order a ton of fresh new shark movies. And so that's the 4 movies that I did, those were all for Sharknado Weeks to premiere other shark movies. And the very last Sharknado Week they did, which I think was 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, it was whatever your Santa Jaws was, they they had Anthony C. Ferrante, who is the creator of Sharknado, make a movie to premiere at the end of the week called Zombie Tsunami, with the idea that they were getting off sharks and onto zombies, which they thought would be the new sharks. Okay. So they were like, this is our last Sharknado week, and now it's going to be zombies. But Zombies Tsunami didn't take off, and so they didn't but also Sharknado week stopped. I think much to the fans' chagrin, because there's a lot of shark fanatics out there, and like a lot of requests for Santa Jaws 2, which I guess if you're out there and you want to see a Santa Jaws 2, tweet at Sci-Fi. And I think if they got a flood of tweets saying that people wanted a Santa Jaws 2, it would happen, because they're pretty good about listening to their fans, honestly.
We could try and make that happen, like legitimately. We could get a petition. Petition? We could make a campaign out of it if you want. So what we do is, so basically what we need people to watch Santa Jaws. We need people to love it. We need people then to say, you know what, we want more of this. And then ultimately, as we say, get in touch with Sci-Fi and tell them how much they loved it and how much they want a number 2. That's basically what we need to do, right?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
okay.
If there's a flood of people telling Sci-Fi they want to see Santa Jaws 2, then I think that would be the thing that would do it. And then all of the actors are on board. We have a text chain that me and the cast still text each other all the. There really was something, and maybe it was because the search was so exhaustive for the cast. But all the pieces clicked, because it's always hard to cast a family as well, because everybody has to kind of look alike. They have to look like a family. Yeah. And so on top of trying to find adult actors that look like children, they also had to look like each other and the parents that we were casting. And so it was just such a hard movie to cast. But as soon as all these actors were in the same room, they just all clicked and were like a family. Yeah. So it's really the only movie that I've done where it's pretty steady communication with, actually next month, Arthur, who played the older brother in the film, he's coming stay with me while he works on a movie, and so me and him are good friends. And he's like, oh, let's watch Santa Jaws together whenever I'm there. And so I mean, the cast is in. So we have that. They're all ready to go. Reed has many pitches for me. He's a filmmaker himself. He's amazing. But Reed has a lot of ideas for where Cody can go next. So yeah, all we need, if Sci-Fi was like, hey, there's a lot of demand for a sequel, then it would probably happen.
Leave it with me. Leave it with us. We'll think about it, because we've made certain things happen, sort of influenced certain things happening. So who knows? Why not? Yeah. Okay. So what's next for you? Are we talking Easter Jaws, Thanksgiving Jaws? What's next?
Well, I do have some shark movies in my back pocket that I'd like to would really like to make. I have some stuff in development right now that looks good to make next year. None of it is shark related, unfortunately. But it is genre stuff. Looking at doing some fun horror films, exploitation stuff. So that's a really good time. Cool. And I guess if I could make any shark movie that I've been working on, what I would want to do is, I have an idea for it's a trilogy of movies. That's a non-negotiable element of it, and it's a live action version of Street Sharks, the 90s cartoon classic. Yes, I know. Okay. Without giving away too much about your idea, what can you tell us about that? Because that sounds fascinating. Well, I feel like there was a string of trilogies that happened in the 90s, and the sort of formula was, you had your origin story movie, and then your second one that got a little weird with it, and then your third one where you time traveled. So that's the arc of the three films. But I think something that would really be cool. I guess this is showing my hand a little bit, but I mean, I don't own the rights or anything, so it's not like it's a long shot, but I mean, if somebody wants to do this, I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll just go ahead and spill the beans. But I think a really cool way to do it would be to kind of do a collab with the WWE and have the actor do mask work, like animatronic masks, so that the street sharks, you know, using like pro wrestlers, it would all be like practical, just using like really cool shark mask on like wrestlers. And so I feel like there's a lot of cachet there. Additionally, because like, you know, street sharks, it's more of like a were shark situation where they were like surfers by day and street sharks by also day, I guess. But so I feel like there's some really cool casting that can be done. I've always wanted to do something with stop motion, and I think it'd be a really cool one to do that with as well, because of the movement of sharks through the asphalt. So I think there's a lot of cool possibilities. I think it'd also be a cool 90s timepiece to like an homage to that trilogy formula that I love so much.
I must admit, when I asked the question, I wasn't thinking that that's where this question was going to go. But it's fantastic. It sounds like a great idea. Where can people follow you? How can they keep track of what you're up to? And what
Well, I have a Facebook, a Twitter, and an Instagram. I guess I post any film updates to all of them. I guess Twitter, God, I've been so off of social media these days just because it's, you know, it's just another stressor this year just to see it. But but I do always post if I have any good info on my movies. So I guess Twitter would probably be the best way, the most straightforward way. And my Twitter name is Misty and the letters FN Talley. And so Misty F and Talley. And then, and then Instagram, I'll post set photos and stuff whenever I'm back on a set. So that one's Twisty Malley. So you can find me there too. Those are the two best.
Wonderful. Well, what I'll do is I'll put links in those underneath the video and in the article that we'll post for the interview. Misty, thank you so much for taking some time. It's been so much fun talking to you. I mean, you're just, you're an incredible filmmaker. I know that some of these movies sometimes don't get the recognition they deserve, but I really sort of implore everybody, get a copy of Santa Jaws somewhere, watch it. You'll have a great time. It's a fantastic film. And
it's on Prime right now. It's super easy to get it.
It's on Prime. There you go. Who knew? It's on Prime. We'll put a link in the Prime. We'll put a link to the Prime thing at the bottom as well, so you can all watch it with the family together. It's a lot of fun. And do be sure to follow Misty on Twitter and the Facebook and Instagram, so you can keep track of all of her future shark movies and all other amazing projects. Guys, thanks so much for watching. This is Ross from the Daily Jaws. Misty, I'll leave you with the final words.
Well, I mean, just thanks so much for having me. It was a blast to to reimagine Jaws with you. And now I kind of want to make it.
Well, you're talking to the right guy.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for watching, and we'll take care and see you again soon. Bye-bye. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Please consider liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to the channel, and clicking those all-important notifications. For more great Jaws content, visit thedailyjaws.com.